Hello everyone and welcome back to your worst nightmare YouTube channel. To help us feel even more connected as a community, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you are watching from. If you would like to share some of your horror encounter, do well to email us through the description of this video. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button. Thanks. Now, back to today's episode. The day my husband found out about my OnlyFans account was supposed to be the end of our marriage, but none of us could have predicted the horror that would tear our family apart instead. I had started my OnlyFans account in secret, never intending for anyone to find out. It was a way to make some extra money while staying home with our kids. My husband, Dan, had been laid off from his job, and with bills piling up, I felt like I had no other choice. What started as a small side hustle quickly turned into a full-blown career. The money was good, better than anything I had made before, and I became addicted to the steady income. The more successful I became, the harder it was to keep the secret. I hid it well. My filming equipment was locked away, and I worked during the day when Dan was out job hunting, but I always had this anxiety that he'd find out. My worst fears were realized one evening when I came home to find Dan sitting in front of my laptop, staring at my account page. I braced myself for the inevitable argument, but his reaction wasn't what I expected. Dan was furious, yes, but more than that, he was hurt. He felt betrayed that I hadn't trusted him enough to share what I was doing. We fought for hours, both of us saying things we didn't mean, but in the end, we both realized we needed each other more than ever. We decided to work through it, promising to rebuild our trust. But then, something happened that neither of us could have anticipated. One evening, a man knocked on our door. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, with a strange, knowing smile. He said he was a fan of my work and had tracked down our address. My heart dropped into my stomach, but Dan stepped in, demanding that the man leave immediately. The man didn't argue. Instead, he handed Dan an envelope and left, whistling as he walked back to his car. Inside the envelope were photographs, hundreds of them. They weren't just for my OnlyFans content. They were photo shots of our home, our children playing in the yard, Dan and me arguing in the kitchen. The photos spanned weeks, maybe months, taken from angles that suggested hidden cameras. There were also detailed notes about our daily routines, our habits, and even our conversations. It was clear this man had been watching us for a long time. Terrified, we called the police, but they weren't much help. They advised us to install security cameras and be cautious, but there was little they could do without a direct threat. That night, we barely slept, jumping at every creak and shadow. We decided to stay with Dan's parents for a while, hoping to distance ourselves from whatever nightmare had invaded our lives. But it didn't work. The next day, Dan's parents received a package. Inside were more photographs, this time showing us at their house, along with a letter. The letter was short, just a few sentences, but it was enough to chill us to the bone. You can run, but you can't hide. We'll always be watching. The police got involved again, this time more seriously. They advised us to move, to change our identities if necessary. But before we could make any decisions, things took an even darker turn. Our kids started having nightmares, describing in strange detail a man who stood at the foot of their beds at night. We never saw anyone, but the children were sure that he was real, that he talked to them, telling them secrets about our family that they shouldn't have known. The stress was tearing us apart. Dan and I fought constantly, our trust eroded by fear and suspicion. My OnlyFans account became a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, a decision that had somehow turned into a nightmare. We moved twice, each time hoping to escape, but the letters and photographs followed us. In the end, we did the only thing we could. We ran. We left everything behind, changing our names and cutting ties with everyone we knew. But even now, in our new lives, with new faces and new identities, the fear remains. I deleted my account, but it didn't matter. The damage has already been done. When my parents stumbled upon my OnlyFans account, I expected anger, disappointment, maybe even shame. What I didn't expect was the revelation of a family secret that would shatter everything I thought I knew about them. I'd always been the rebellious one in the family, the black sheep. While my siblings pursued respectable careers and followed the paths laid out for them, I took a different route. I moved out as soon as I could, leaving behind the stifling expectations of my conservative upbringing. I loved my parents, but I needed freedom to explore, to make mistakes, to live my life on my terms. That's how I ended up creating an OnlyFans account. It wasn't something I planned to do forever, just a way to make some quick money while figuring out what I really wanted in life. It felt empowering, controlling my content, engaging with fans, and making a comfortable income. I kept it hidden from my family, knowing they'd never understand. Then one day, during a routine visit to my parents' house, I noticed something strange. My mother was acting distant, avoiding eye contact, and my father was unusually quiet. I shrugged it off at first, thinking they were just in one of their moods. But as I was leaving, my mother pulled me aside. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight with something that wasn't quite anger, but wasn't far from it either. We sat down in the living room, and my father joined us. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I felt a knot of dread forming in my stomach. My mother pulled out her phone, opened a web page, and handed it to me. My heart stopped when I saw what was on the screen, my OnlyFans profile. "How did you?" I started, but she cut me off. "It doesn't matter how we found out," she said sharply. "What matters is that we know." I braced myself for the lecture, the tears, the accusations. But they didn't come. Instead, my parents exchanged a look, and my father sighed deeply before speaking. "There's something you need to know," he said, his voice heavy with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "Something we never told you or your siblings." What followed was a story that unraveled everything I thought I knew about my family. My parents had met in college, both of them coming from strict religious backgrounds. They fell in love quickly, but my mother had a secret that would have destroyed their families if it ever got out. Before meeting my father, she had worked in the adult entertainment industry, doing things that would have been unthinkable to the people she grew up with. When my father found out, instead of leaving her, he made a decision. They agreed to keep it hidden, bury it in the past, and build a life together far away from that world. They married, had children, and became the picture-perfect couple. But the secret never fully died. It lingered like a ghost, haunting them in ways I could never have imagined. When they discovered my OnlyFans account, it wasn't anger they felt, it was fear. Fear that history was repeating itself, that the shame they had worked so hard to escape would come crashing back into their lives. I was stunned, unable to process the information. The image I had of my parents, stern, righteous, unwavering in their beliefs, was shattered. The truth was far more complicated, far more human. They weren't just disappointed in me, they were terrified that I was walking the same path my mother had narrowly escaped. "What do you want me to do?" I asked finally, unsure of how to navigate this new reality. "We want you to stop," my mother said, tears burning in her eyes. "Not just for us, but for you. We know where this road leads, and it's not a place you want to go." But I wasn't my mother. I had made my own choices, and I wasn't ready to give up the independence I had fought so hard for. I didn't tell them that, though. Instead, I nodded, promising to think about it. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced. I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions, guilt, confusion, and a newfound understanding of my parents. They weren't the perfect figures I had rebelled against. They were flawed, just like me, trying to navigate a world that often made no sense. In the end, I decided to take a break from OnlyFans, not because they asked me to, but because I needed time to process everything. The truth about my parents had changed something in me, something I wasn't ready to confront. We never spoke of it again. My parents went back to their lives, and I went back to mine, but the weight of that conversation lingered. It was a reminder that everyone has secrets, even the people you think you know best. And sometimes, those secrets can change everything. I was just another broke college student struggling to make ends meet, drowning in textbooks, and working a minimum wage job that barely covered my rent. My roommate, Emily, seemed to have it all figured out. She was quiet, reserved, and kept to herself most of the time. We weren't exactly close, but we got along well enough to share a space without any drama. It was Emily, surprisingly, who first suggested OnlyFans to me. I'd been complaining about money, stressing over bills and tuition, when she casually mentioned it. "You ever thought about starting an OnlyFans?" she asked, her voice nonchalant as she scrolled through her phone on the couch. I laughed, thinking she was joking. Me? No way. I wouldn't even know where to start. She shrugged, finally looking up from her phone. "It's not as hard as you think. And you'd be surprised how much you can make. I've got a friend who's doing really well on there." I brushed it off at first, but the idea stuck in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like a viable option. After all, Emily made it sound easy enough, and I desperately needed the money. A few days later, I decided to give it a try. I didn't tell anyone, not even Emily. I wasn't sure how she'd react, and I wasn't ready to deal with any judgment. But to my surprise, things took off quickly. I started making money, real money, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to worry about how I'd pay my rent or afford groceries. As I became more comfortable with my new side hustle, I noticed Emily's behavior started to change. She was spending more time in her room, locking the door and refusing to let me in. When she did come out, she was distant, almost like she was avoiding me. I chalked it up to stress. Finals were coming up, and we were all feeling the pressure. One night, after a particularly lucrative week, I decided to celebrate with a bottle of wine. I invited Emily to join me, hoping to break through whatever wall had come up between us. To my surprise, she agreed, and we sat together in the living room, sipping wine and chatting about life. As the night wore on and the wine flowed, Emily started to open up. She talked about her struggles, her insecurities, and the pressure she felt from her family to succeed. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen her, and I found myself feeling a connection I hadn't before. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell. "I know about your OnlyFans," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. My heart skipped a beat. "You do?" She nodded, her eyes locked on the floor. "I found out a few weeks ago. I wasn't spying, I swear. I saw something on your laptop when you left it open one day. I was mortified, but she quickly reassured me. It's okay. I'm not judging you. Actually, I think it's kind of amazing that you're making it work." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Thanks, Emily. I really appreciate that. I wasn't sure how you'd react." She hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What is it?" I asked, sensing her discomfort. She took a deep breath and looked up at me, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "I used to have an OnlyFans too." The confession caught me off guard, but before I could respond, she continued. "It was a few years ago, before I came to this school. I was in a really bad place, and I needed the money. But it wasn't like it is for you. I got involved with the wrong people who used me, controlled me." Her words hung in the air, heavy with pain and regret. I could see the fear in her eyes, the way she seemed to shrink into herself as she spoke. "I didn't just do it for myself," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "There were others. They forced me into it, made me do things I never wanted to do. And when I tried to leave, they threatened me, said they'd hurt my family if I didn't keep going. I was stunned, my mind racing as I tried to process what she was saying. This wasn't the Emily I thought I knew. This was someone who had been through hell, someone who had been living with a secret so dark it had consumed her. Emily, I said, reaching out to touch her hand, you don't have to go through this alone. We can get help, we can. She shook her head, pulling her hand away. No, you don't understand. They're still out there. They're still watching. And if they find out I told you, I can't risk it. I can't put you in danger. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about her past. This was about now. These people, whoever they were, still had control over her, and she was terrified. Please, she begged, her eyes pleading with me, don't tell anyone. I'm trying to move on, trying to start over. But if they find me, I don't know what they'll do. I nodded, my heart breaking for her. I won't tell anyone, Emily. I promise. She gave me a small, grateful smile, but the fear in her eyes remained. We finished the bottle of wine in silence, the weight of her confession hanging over us like a dark cloud. After that night, Emily withdrew even more. She became a ghost in our apartment, barely speaking, barely eating. I wanted to help her, to do something, but I didn't know how. The fear of those unknown people, the ones who still had power over her, kept me silent. Then, one morning, she was gone. No note, no explanation, just an empty room and a sense of dread that settled deep in my bones. I tried calling her, texting her, but there was no response. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. A few weeks later, I received a package in the mail. It was from Emily, postmarked from a city halfway across the country. Inside was a letter and a small box. The letter was short, just a few lines. I'm safe now, it read. I had to leave. I'm sorry, I couldn't say goodbye. Please, take care of yourself, and don't let them find you. The box contained a small, silver necklace, a token of friendship, or perhaps a reminder of the bond we had shared. I clutched it in my hand, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Emily had escaped, but the shadow of her past still lingered. And though she was gone, the fear she had left behind stayed with me, a constant reminder that some secrets are too dangerous to share. When I first met Sarah, I knew we were going to hit it off. We were assigned as roommates during our sophomore year of college, and within weeks, we were inseparable. We went to parties together, pulled all-nighters studying, and even started a small online side hustle to make some extra cash. It was perfect until things started to get complicated. We had a routine. Every Thursday night, we'd hang out in our apartment, have a few drinks, and brainstorm new ways to grow our side hustle. We had recently started an OnlyFans account, mostly as a joke at first, but it quickly became a decent source of income. We were careful to keep our faces hidden and never shared personal details, but the money kept coming in, so we kept doing it. Everything was going smoothly until Sarah started acting strange. She became withdrawn, skipping classes, and avoiding our usual hangouts. At first, I thought she was just stressed from school, but then I noticed the subtle changes. She stopped drinking at our Thursday night sessions, she seemed more tired, and she was constantly running to the bathroom. One evening, after what felt like the 100th time she left the room to throw up, I confronted her. Sarah, what's going on? You're not yourself lately. Is something wrong? She looked at me with tears in her eyes, and I knew immediately that something was seriously wrong. I'm pregnant, she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know what to do. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't part of the plan. We were supposed to be carefree college students, living life to the fullest, not dealing with something as serious as a pregnancy. Does he know? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, I haven't told him. I'm scared, and I don't even know if I should keep it. I sat down next to her, pulling her into a hug. We'll figure this out. You're not alone in this. But things only got more complicated from there. Sarah decided to keep the pregnancy a secret, even from the father, who was someone from our friend group. She was terrified of how he would react and didn't want to ruin his life, or ours. I agreed to support her, even though it meant hiding the truth from everyone else. As the weeks passed, Sarah's belly started to show, and the secrecy became harder to maintain. We made excuses for her absence at parties and lied about her sudden aversion to alcohol. But the stress was taking a toll on both of us, and the strain on our friendship was becoming unbearable. One night, after a particularly tense argument, Sarah dropped a bombshell. "I'm going to have the baby, but I'm not keeping it," she said, her voice cold and detached. "I've already found a couple who's willing to adopt." I was stunned. This was a side of Sarah I had never seen before, so determined and resolute. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, trying to be supportive, even though I was filled with doubt. The weeks turned into months, and Sarah's due date approached. She continued with our OnlyFans work, using the extra money to cover medical expenses and keep her pregnancy hidden. It was a precarious balancing act, one that constantly had us on edge. Finally, the day came when Sarah went into labor. It was a chaotic, terrifying experience, especially because we had to keep everything under wraps. I stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand as she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. But as soon as the baby was born, Sarah became distant. She refused to hold her, refused to look at her. The adoption was arranged immediately, and within hours, the baby was handed over to the couple Sarah had found online. I tried to console her, but she shut me out completely. She moved out of our apartment the next day, cutting off all contact. I was left alone, reeling from the whole experience, unsure of how to process everything that had happened. Months later, I received a letter from Sarah. It was brief and to the point. "I made a mistake. I can't live with myself. The baby wasn't just mine to give away." That was the last I heard from her. To make matters worse, I later found out that the couple who adopted the baby weren't who they claimed to be. They were part of a trafficking ring that targeted vulnerable young mothers like Sarah, and they had no intention of raising the child in a loving home. The guilt was overwhelming. I had been so focused on keeping the secret and protecting Sarah that I hadn't seen the signs. I hadn't done enough to ensure the safety of the baby we had brought into this world. Years later, I still think about that baby girl. I wonder where she is, what kind of life she's living. And I think about Sarah, who vanished from my life without a trace, leaving behind nothing but regret and unanswered questions. Some secrets are too heavy to keep. Some choices haunt you forever. And some mistakes can never be undone. Running an OnlyFans account isn't just about taking pictures and posting videos. It's about running a business. I set boundaries, made sure to keep my personal life separate, and never crossed any lines. I thought I was untouchable. But then I met someone who didn't just want my content. He wanted everything. His username was Mr. Lutz. He subscribed to my page with a tip so generous that I had to double-check the numbers. He messaged me, not with the usual crude requests, but with genuine curiosity. He wanted to know about my aspirations, my dreams, my hobbies. It felt refreshing to have a subscriber who seemed to see me as a person, not just a product. At first, I kept our conversations polite and professional. But Mr. Lutz was persistent. He started tipping higher amounts, not for any specific content, but just because he appreciated me. He never asked for anything in return, just kept supporting me in ways that most of my other subscribers never did. Then came the gifts. They started arriving at my P.O. box, expensive perfumes, designer clothes, tech gadgets I'd only dreamed of owning. Each gift came with a note, always signed, "For the most perfect woman." Mr. Lux. I knew it was weird, but I rationalized it. Plenty of creators had wealthy fans who liked to spoil them, right? It's just part of the job. But then Mr. Lux made an offer that made me pause. I want to meet you in person, he wrote. Name your price. Any location, any time, I'll be there. I was tempted, no lie. The money he was offering was more than I made in a year at my regular job. But something didn't sit right with me. I declined politely, saying I didn't meet fans in person. Mr. Lux didn't push back. He simply responded, I respect your decision, but know that my offer stands. After that, the gift stopped, but his tips continued. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Maybe I'd dodged a bullet. But things were about to get much, much worse. One evening, I received a message from Mr. Lux that sent a chill down my spine. Check your email, was all it said. Curious and slightly anxious, I did as instructed. What I found was a series of documents, bank statements, credit card transactions, and even my lease agreement. They were all mine. How did you get these? I typed back, my fingers trembling. I have my ways, he replied. I told you, I want everything. Panic set in. I immediately contacted the bank, changed my passwords, and considered moving. But what Mr. Lux had done next was far more terrifying. The next day, I received a package, this time delivered directly to my home, not the P.O. box. Inside was a simple note, I'm always with you. I had never given him my home address. I didn't know how he found it, but I realized then that this wasn't just about money or gifts. Mr. Lux wasn't just a fan. He was someone who had access to parts of my life that no one should. I decided to quit OnlyFans. I deleted my account, erased all my content, and tried to disappear from the digital world. But Mr. Lux wasn't done with me. The next package was more personal. It contained a photo of me from that very morning, taken while I was sitting in my living room. The angle suggested that it had been shot through a window. Alongside it was another note, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We belong together. That night, I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend, too scared to return home. But the next morning, my friend received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end simply said, tell her I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I went to the police, but without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. Mr. Lux was clever, covering his tracks and leaving no trail. I was left in a state of constant fear, never knowing where he might show up next or how much he knew about me. It's been a year since I fled my old life. I moved across the country, changed my name, and started over. But no matter where I go, I can't shake the feeling that he's still watching, still waiting for the right moment to step back into my life. And the worst part, I'll never know for sure. Because Mr. Lux isn't just a stalker, he's the perfect predator, one who blends into the shadows and manipulates the game from behind the scenes. Even now, as I type this, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, wondering if he's there, somewhere, smiling at the chaos he's created. And I know that no matter how far I run, I'll never truly escape him. When I first started my OnlyFans, it was just a way to make some extra cash. The pandemic had cut my hours at work, and I needed a side hustle. It was easy money, just a few photos and videos here and there. My audience grew faster than I expected, and within a few months, I was making more from subscriptions than from my regular job. It felt empowering. But with popularity came the weirdos. I brushed off the creepy messages, the overly intimate comments, and the occasional odd requests. They were all part of the business, or so I thought. But then there was him. It started with a simple DM, nothing alarming at first. He introduced himself as John and complimented my content. He seemed respectful, which was rare, so I replied with a polite thank you. That was my first mistake. John became a regular in my DMs, always supportive, never crossing the line, at least not at first. He'd ask about my day, how I was feeling, even offer advice on content ideas. It was nice to have a fan who seemed to care, someone who wasn't just there for the usual reasons. Then, things started getting weird. John would reference things I hadn't shared online, like what I was wearing that day, or the exact time I got home from running errands. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe I had mentioned these things in a post and just forgot. But the details became too specific, too accurate. One night, I got a message from John. "You look really cute in that red dress today." My blood ran cold. I had worn a red dress that day, but I hadn't posted about it or taken any photos. How did he know? I started to feel uneasy in my own home. I changed my routines, started checking over my shoulder when I left the house, even covered up my windows. But no matter what I did, John knew. He knew everything. The messages became more intrusive. He'd send me photos of myself, walking to my car, grabbing coffee, even sitting in my living room. The angles weren't from my phone or any camera I had set up. Someone was watching me. I went to the police, but they couldn't do much with just online harassment and no solid evidence. They suggested I take a break from social media, but my income depended on it. I couldn't just quit. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed. It was a message from John. "I'm closer than you think." My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. Then I heard a noise, a creak from the hallway. My apartment was supposed to be empty. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but before I could hit call, the door to my bedroom swung open. There he was, standing in the doorway, holding his phone in one hand and a knife in the other. It was John. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You and me, together at last." I backed up against the wall, my mind racing. I had to stay calm, had to think. But all I could focus on was the cold, sharp edge of the blade he held. "Why are you doing this?" I managed to choke out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Because I love you," he said, stepping closer. "You made me feel special, like I was the only one who mattered." I didn't know what to do. He was between me and the door, and I had no way out. I had never felt so helpless in my life. But then, just as he was about to close the distance between us, I heard sirens. The police had traced my 911 call. John's expression twisted in rage as he realized what was happening. He lunged at me, but I ducked out of the way just in time. He slashed at the air, missing me by inches, and I bolted for the door. I could hear him right behind me as I ran down the hallway, praying the police would get here in time. I burst through the front door just as the squad cars pulled up. The officers rushed in, guns drawn, and within seconds, they had John on the ground, cuffing him. I stood there, shaking, watching as they dragged him away. His eyes never left mine, even as they shoved him into the back of the car. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I'll always be watching." I moved to a new city, changed my name, deleted all my social media. But I still sleep with the lights on, and every time I hear a creak or a bump in the night, my heart stops. Because I know he's out there, waiting. And I don't think he'll ever stop. It started as a normal night, an evening like any other. I was sitting in my apartment, finishing up some edits for my OnlyFans content. The routine was familiar: check messages, set up new posts, and make sure everything was ready for my subscribers. I had a modest following, nothing too extreme, but enough to keep me busy. Then came the message. It was from a new subscriber, an account with no profile picture and a username that seemed odd. The message was simple but chilling. "I'm looking forward to seeing your next post. You have no idea how much you've intrigued me." I didn't think much of it at first. Online anonymity often brings out odd behaviors, and this seemed like just another odd message. I went about my evening, dismissing the message as just another fan with a penchant for drama. That was until I noticed something strange. The subscriber was using a very specific location tag in their comments, a location that was disturbingly close to my neighborhood. It was unnerving, but I tried to brush it off as a coincidence. Days went by, and I received more and more of these strange messages. Each one was personalized, mentioning details about my posts that no one else seemed to notice. I tried to ignore it, but the frequency and the specificity of the messages were starting to get under my skin. One night, I decided to do a live stream to interact with my audience and maybe find some distraction from the constant paranoid feeling. As I was chatting, I noticed a new comment pop up. "I see you're live. I'm closer than you think." It was from the same anonymous subscriber. My heart raced. I looked around my apartment, half expecting someone to burst in, but everything seemed normal. Then, the power went out. The apartment was plunged into darkness. I scrambled to find my phone to use as a flashlight. As I fumbled around, I heard the faintest sound of something, or someone, moving outside my door. I pressed my ear against it and heard a distinct, heavy breathing. My mind raced through every horror movie I'd ever seen, but this was real. My heart pounded as I slowly moved toward the door to check. I took a deep breath and peered through the peephole. I saw nothing. Relief and fear mixed as I backed away from the door, clutching my phone. I tried to call the police, but there was no signal. My only option was to wait. Minutes felt like hours. The power eventually came back on, and I found a new message waiting for me. "I hope you enjoyed the blackout. See you soon." That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, eyes darting around my darkened apartment, waiting for any sign of an intruder. The next day, I decided to report everything to the police and close my account. It was a terrifying reminder of how vulnerable you can be, even behind a screen. I never found out who the subscriber was or what their intentions truly were. But I learned a valuable lesson about the risks of online interactions and how quickly something that seems harmless can turn into a nightmare. I had been building my OnlyFans account for a while and was happy when I received a message from a reputed influencer marketing agency offering me a collaboration. They promised to boost my profile, increase my earnings, and provide me with high-quality promotional content. Eager to expand my reach, I agreed. The agency sent over a detailed contract and instructions for the collaboration. The contract outlined that I would create a series of exclusive videos to be featured on their platform. The instructions were straightforward. Produce a set number of videos, adhere to certain themes, and submit them by specific deadlines. The terms seemed reasonable, and the initial payment was substantial. The first few weeks went smoothly. I created the content as requested, and my subscriber count began to climb. The agency praised my work and asked for more. They seemed highly professional, so I didn't think twice about their increasing demands. Then, things took a bizarre turn. One evening, I received an email from the agency with a new set of instructions. The message contained a link to a secure platform where I was instructed to upload my latest video. The email also mentioned that this was a special, private auction for the content. The idea seemed odd, but I was assured it was part of their promotional strategy. I uploaded the video as instructed and waited for further details. That's when I noticed something strange. The video had a lot more views and interactions than usual, but it wasn't showing up on my regular feed or my account's analytics. I tried reaching out to the agency for clarification, but received no response. A week later, I received another email with a new set of instructions. Prepare for the next phase. Your video will be auctioned. Follow the enclosed guidelines. Confused and slightly alarmed, I followed the guidelines. The process involved creating a promotional post and sharing it with my audience. The post included a teaser for the video, encouraging my followers to bid on it through the auction platform. I still didn't understand how the auction worked or why it was necessary, but the agency's instructions were clear, and I complied. The auction began, and I watched in horror as the bid skyrocketed. The figures were astronomical, far beyond anything I had seen before. I didn't understand why people would pay so much for my video, but the auction continued, and the highest bidder won. The following day, I received a large payment from the agency. The amount was impressive, but something felt off. The winning bidder contacted me directly, requesting additional content and access to personal interactions. The requests were invasive, demanding more than just professional boundaries. I became increasingly uneasy. The agency's demands grew more intense and invasive. They started asking for videos with specific themes and settings, many of which felt uncomfortable or unsafe. When I tried to negotiate or express my concerns, the agency's responses were dismissive and threatening, warning me of severe penalties for noncompliance. As the auction continued, I noticed disturbing patterns. Other creators involved in the auction seemed to be experiencing similar issues, and there were reports of uncomfortable interactions and untraceable payments. I started receiving anonymous messages from people claiming to have purchased my videos, making strange and unsettling comments. I decided to investigate further. I dug into the agency's background and found nothing but a series of fake reviews and obscure information. The auction platform had no official contact details or customer support. It was clear that something was seriously wrong. In a desperate attempt to escape the situation, I contacted my lawyer and explained everything. They advised me to stop all content creation immediately and to distance myself from the agency and the auction platform. I terminated my collaboration, deleted all content related to the auction, and shut down my account temporarily. Despite my efforts, the damage was done. My videos continued to circulate, and I was left with a lingering fear that my privacy had been irrevocably violated. The auction's impact haunted me, and I found it difficult to trust new opportunities or collaborations. I never learned the full extent of what had happened or who was behind the auction, but the experience left me with a profound sense of betrayal and insecurity. I had been lured into a dangerous game that exploited my content and invaded my privacy, and the scars from that experience stayed with me long after the auction ended. My OnlyFans account was my sanctuary, a place where I controlled everything. I chose the angles, the lighting, the themes. Every detail was meticulously planned. It was my art, my livelihood, and my escape from a world that often felt too chaotic to manage. That's why when a tech fan offered me an innovative way to boost my content, I was intrigued. He called it immersive filming. It was a high-tech setup that promised to take my videos to the next level: 360-degree cameras, motion sensors, and even a virtual reality integration that would make my content more interactive for my subscribers. He pitched it as the future of adult content, and the idea of being ahead of the curve was too tempting to pass up. He sent me a custom rig, explaining that all I had to do was set it up in my studio and follow his instructions. The rig was impressive, sleek, high-tech, and easy to use. The first few videos I shot were incredible. The quality was unmatched, and the immersive experience did exactly what he promised. My subscribers loved it, and my earnings shot up almost overnight. Then, one day, he messaged me with a new idea. He wanted to test something he called real-time personalization, where the video would adapt to the viewer's preferences as they watched. It sounded like cutting-edge tech, the kind of thing that could set me apart from every other creator out there. All I had to do was wear a small, barely noticeable device, a chip embedded in a necklace, that would sync my movements and reactions with the viewers in real time. He assured me it was perfectly safe, just a way to enhance the connection between me and my audience. It sounded strange, but his previous suggestions had all been successful, so I agreed. The first time I used the device, everything seemed normal, at least at first. The recording session went smoothly, and I felt an odd but not unpleasant sensation, almost like I was more aware of my audience than usual. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Subscribers claimed they felt like they were right there with me, and my follower count exploded. But then, strange things started happening. I began getting messages from subscribers commenting on things that weren't in the videos, details about my personal life, like the color of my bed sheets or what I had been wearing earlier in the day. At first, I thought they were just guessing, but then the details got more specific, more intimate. One subscriber messaged me, asking if I had enjoyed the movie I watched the night before. I hadn't mentioned the movie in any of my posts, and I had watched it alone, in my living room, with my phone off. Another asked how my dinner with my friend went, down to the exact dish I had ordered. My blood ran cold as I realized these weren't just guesses, they were watching me. I confronted the tech guy, demanding answers. He tried to brush it off, saying the device might have had some glitches and that he would look into it. But I wasn't buying it. I disconnected the device, shut down my account temporarily, and tried to regain some sense of normalcy. But it didn't stop. The messages kept coming, and they were getting more invasive. People knew things about me, where I went, who I talked to, even what I was thinking at certain moments. My phone would buzz at odd hours with notifications from subscribers commenting on private conversations I had never recorded. In a panic, I tore apart my studio, searching for hidden cameras, microphones, anything that could explain the breach. But there was nothing. The tech guy had vanished, his online profiles wiped clean, and his email bounced back every time I tried to reach him. Desperate, I reached out to a cybersecurity expert. After days of digging, they found something chilling. The device I had worn wasn't just a motion sensor. It was a highly sophisticated piece of technology designed to tap into biometric data, syncing my physical and emotional responses with the viewers. It had been collecting data on me 24/7, mapping my daily routines, recording my thoughts, and even predicting my actions. Worse, this data had been sold, auctioned off to the highest bidders on the dark web, where my life had become a form of twisted entertainment. They weren't just watching my content, they were watching me, living my life in real time, with all the privacy and intimacy of a scripted performance. I tried to go off the grid, disconnect from everything, but the damage was done. I had become a commodity, my life a nightmare for those willing to pay the price. It started like any other day. I had been steadily growing my OnlyFans account for nearly a year, carefully crafting my content and engaging with my followers. The income was decent, but I knew I could do more. That's when I received a message from an account called Prime Content, offering a lucrative sponsorship deal. They promised exposure on a massive scale, ads, features on major platforms, and most importantly, a guaranteed income boost. All they needed from me was a signed contract and a commitment to produce exclusive content for their promotion. I'd heard of similar deals, and the offer seemed genuine. The contract was long, filled with the usual legal mumbo-jumbo, but I didn't see any red flags. The payout was enticing, and I could really use the extra cash, so I signed it and sent it back without a second thought. Within a week, I started seeing the benefits. My subscriber count surged, and the money began pouring in. My content was being featured in places I never dreamed of, and everything seemed to be going perfectly, until the day I received my first assignment from Prime Content. The message was brief: your next video must feature the product provided in the attached package. Follow the instructions carefully. The package arrived the next day. It was a plain brown box with no return address, containing a high-end designer handbag. The instructions were oddly specific. I was to wear a certain outfit, carry the bag in a public setting, and film a casual vlog, making sure to highlight the brand logo. It felt a little strange, but it wasn't too different from typical sponsorship deals. I did as instructed, posted the video, and thought nothing more of it. But then, the assignments started coming more frequently. Each package was stranger than the last. A rare perfume, a vintage watch, an expensive bottle of wine. Every item came with precise instructions, down to the exact wording I was to use in my videos. And the locations became increasingly odd. A particular park in the evening, a specific restaurant, an unfamiliar street corner. As the weeks went on, I noticed something else. My reflection in the mirror didn't quite match what I saw in the videos. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, but there were differences. A slight change in the way I moved, a different tone in my voice, even the way I smiled. It was like watching someone who looked just like me but wasn't quite the same. One day, I received a new package with instructions that chilled me to the bone. The box contained a pair of surgical gloves and a small vial filled with an unknown liquid. The message was clear. You are to administer this substance to yourself during the next live stream. Do not deviate from the script. Panic set in. What had I gotten myself into? I tried to contact Prime Content, but every attempt to reach them was met with silence. Their website had gone offline, their email bounced back, and the phone number I had no longer existed. Desperate, I reached out to a lawyer to help me get out of the contract. When I explained the situation, he asked to see the document I had signed. After a long silence, he finally looked up, his face pale. "This isn't just a contract," he said. "This is a binding agreement of submission. You've given them more than just your content. You've signed away your freedom." He pointed to a section buried deep in the contract, written in legal jargon I didn't understand when I first signed. The terms allowed Prime Content complete control over my image, my actions, even my physical appearance. I was no longer just a content creator. I was a puppet in their hands. The lawyer advised me to cease all content production immediately, but I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't comply with the next assignment. My mind raced with possibilities. What was in that vial? What could they do to me if I refused? The next live stream was scheduled for that evening. I sat in front of the camera, the vial and gloves beside me, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I couldn't go through with it, but I also knew that breaking the contract could have severe consequences. Just as I was about to cancel the stream, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "You belong to us now. Do as you're told." That was the final straw. I pulled the power cord from my computer and smashed my phone to pieces while breathing fast. I fled my apartment, leaving everything behind, and checked into a cheap motel under a false name, terrified that I'd be found. Days turned into weeks as I hid, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My money ran out quickly, and I had no way to access the funds in my account without triggering alerts. I was trapped, and the once glamorous life I had built was crumbling around me. I eventually found a small, out-of-the-way town where I could lay low, but the fear never left. Every night, I sleep with one eye open, haunted by the knowledge that somewhere out there, Prime Content is waiting for me to slip up, to return to the life they still claim ownership over. And every time I pass a mirror, I see that reflection again, the version of me that isn't quite right, the one they tried to mold and control. It's a constant reminder of the mistake I made when I signed that contract, a mistake that cost me more than I ever could have imagined. I was 3 months into my OnlyFans journey, and things were going better than I could have imagined. The money was good, my followers were growing, and I had established a solid routine that kept my content fresh and engaging. But then, one evening, I received an email that changed everything. The subject line read, "Exclusive opportunity for hiring creators." Inside was an invitation to join an elite group of content creators on a new platform called The Circle. The offer was irresistible. Higher payouts, guaranteed privacy, and a chance to connect with top-tier subscribers willing to pay serious money for exclusive content. It sounded too good to be true, but I was curious. The application process was simple. Just fill out some personal details, provide proof of earnings, and agree to their terms and conditions. I didn't think twice. I hit submit and received a confirmation almost instantly, inviting me to a private online auction the following week. I had no idea what to expect from this auction, but the thought of connecting with high-paying subscribers was exciting. The day arrived, and I logged into the auction site using the credentials they provided. The interface was sleek and minimalist, with a list of participants and their bidding numbers. Then, the auction began. At first, it seemed like a standard bidding war over exclusive content, photo shoots, private messages, video calls. The bids were huge, far beyond anything I had earned before. But as the auction progressed, the items for sale became more personal. One creator was auctioning off a private video of themselves in their home. Another offered a 24-hour live stream, giving a subscriber complete control over their actions for a day. It was strange, but the bids kept rising, and the creators seemed eager to sell. Finally, my name appeared on the screen, with an item listed beneath it, 1 week of full control. I stared at the words, confused. I hadn't agreed to anything like that. Before I could decline, the bidding started. Numbers skyrocketed, and within minutes, the final bid was locked in, a huge amount of money I'd never seen or heard of before. A message popped up on my screen. Congratulations, you've been sold. Panic set in. I tried to log out, but the site wouldn't let me. My phone buzzed with a notification. Payment had already been transferred to my account. Another message followed. Prepare for your first assignment. Suddenly, the screen changed, showing a list of instructions. My buyer had specific demands. I was to follow their orders for the next 7 days, no matter how extreme. The list included everything from wearing certain outfits to performing specific tasks on camera, all with precise instructions on how to document it. It was clear that this wasn't just about content anymore. This was about control. And the more I read, the more disturbing the demands became. I tried to back out, but the contract I had signed when joining the circle was legal. Refusal to comply would result in severe financial penalties, not to mention potential legal action. It was all there in the contract that I hadn't bothered to read. For the next week, I was a puppet, forced to act out the twisted fantasies of someone I had never met. They had complete control over my life, dictating everything from what I ate to when I slept. The tasks became increasingly humiliating and dangerous, pushing me to my limits. One night, they demanded that I walk through my neighborhood in the middle of the night, dressed provocatively and live streaming the entire event. I was terrified, but I had no choice. My reputation, my safety, everything was at risk. The worst part was knowing that I wasn't alone. Other creators were going through the same thing, their lives being auctioned off to the highest bidder. We were all trapped, bound by a contract that had seemed so harmless at first. By the end of the week, I was broken. The money no longer mattered. I just wanted out. But when I tried to contact the circle for help, I found that the website had vanished, leaving no trace of its existence. The payment I received had already been withdrawn from my account, leaving me with nothing but the traumatic memories of what I had been forced to endure. I deleted my OnlyFans account, trying to erase any connection to the nightmare I had lived through. But the fear lingers. Every time my phone buzzes or I receive a new email, I'm reminded of that week and the fact that I could be sold again at any moment. And so I live in fear, knowing that somewhere out there, someone still holds the strings, waiting for the right moment to pull them once more. I was in a tight spot, financially speaking. My day job barely covered the bills, and I needed extra cash, fast. That's when I stumbled upon an ad for a VIP OnlyFans content creator service. It promised higher visibility, guaranteed subscribers, and the potential to make a serious income. It sounded like the perfect solution to my money troubles. The service was straightforward. I'd sign up, pay a small fee, and they'd handle the promotion. The contract was long, filled with legal jargon, but I skipped through it. All I saw were dollar signs, and I didn't want to waste time. I clicked agree and paid the fee. At first, things went as expected. My subscriber count skyrocketed. I was making more money in a month than I had in the entire previous year. But then, strange requests started coming in from subscribers. They wanted to see specific items in the background of my videos, things like a particular brand of wine or a certain type of candle. It seemed odd, but harmless, and they were willing to pay extra, so I complied. Then, one night, I got a message from a new subscriber. He offered an obscene amount of money for a single request: wear the red dress in your next video. Do exactly as I say, and you'll be rewarded. The dress was in my closet, one I hadn't worn in years. How did he know about it? The money was tempting, though, so I put it on and started recording. His instructions were precise: stand in front of the camera, turn around slowly, hold up a glass of wine, and smile. It felt weirdly specific, but I did it. As soon as I uploaded the video, my phone started blowing up. Payments were coming in faster than I could count, but the comments were what caught my eye. They were full of strangers talking about how they'd seen me somewhere before, how familiar I looked in that dress, even though I'd never met them. Some mentioned seeing me in ads or promotional videos that I had no recollection of ever being part of. That's when it hit me. The subscribers weren't just watching, they were using my content for something else, something I hadn't agreed to. I tried to log into the platform's admin section to find out more, but I was locked out. Panic set in. I contacted customer support, but all I got were automated responses. It was as if the service I had signed up for had vanished into thin air, taking my account in content with it. Over the next few days, things ran out of control. I started receiving strange packages, luxury items, clothing, even electronics, all addressed to me, but with no return address. The deliveries were always things I had mentioned in passing or worn in a video, but now they were piling up, filling my apartment with unwanted gifts. Then, I noticed something even more disturbing: the advertisements that people had mentioned. They were all over the internet, using my face, my likeness, in ways I never consented to. But they weren't just normal ads. They were for products I had never heard of, some with disturbing implications, others that were clearly scams. I was being sold, piece by piece, without my knowledge or consent. I tried to reach out to a lawyer, but every time I made an appointment, something went wrong. Sudden illnesses, unexpected cancellations, or my call simply not going through. It was as if someone or something was making sure I couldn't break free. My bank account, once flush with cash, started to reduce rapidly. Charges appeared that I never made: subscriptions to strange services, donations to strange organizations, all linked back to my OnlyFans profile. When I tried to stop the transactions, I was told that they were authorized and non-refundable, all part of the contract I had signed. Desperation set in. I went back to that contract, finally reading the legal contract. Buried in the legal jargon was a sentence that I missed while signing up. It said, by agreeing to their terms, I had unknowingly given them the rights to my image, my content, and even my identity. They could use it however they wanted, for as long as they wanted. I had sold myself to a faceless entity, and there was no way out. Now, my life is a shell of what it used to be. I can't escape the ads that haunt me every time I go online, or the deliveries that still arrive at my door, reminding me of the trap I walked into. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, knowing that I'm no longer in control of my own life. And the worst part, the messages from new subscribers haven't stopped. They keep coming, each one more demanding than the last, with increasingly strange and dangerous requests. But I can't quit, because every time I try, something in my life goes horribly wrong. So, I keep playing along, knowing that I'm trapped in a game I'll never win, a game where I'm both the player and the prize.